Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here. Time for another Patreon-sponsored blind reaction. And this one comes to you courtesy of Blood Mage, who has requested that I react to Who is Demiurge? Overlord Demiurge, Jaldabaoth, Lore Creation, and Twisted Characteristics from AniNews. So, yeah, Demiurge. We're talking Overlord today, which, actually, this is not the only Overlord-related Patreon request this month, weirdly enough. It's not even in season, no new episodes out. I'm not reacting to it currently. But, yeah, still got 2 Patreon requests about Overlord in the same month, which is fine by me. It's a very interesting show. There's a lot to discuss, and, yeah, here, Demiurge, that's definitely an interesting topic. He's a very, very unique character, his place in things. Yeah, because he's definitely very loyal to Ainz, but it also kind of feels like he has his own agenda, his own thing going on. And, like, sometimes it kind of feels like he's in control, and he's kind of driving things. Because, I mean, there's that whole running gag of Ainz just sort of stumbling into his plan, and then Demiurge sees the hidden wisdom of it, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know really what we're going to be fully talking about here. I mean, because the name Demiurge and Jaldabaoth, which he uses as his alias, those are like Gnostic deities, right? I think. So we might be going into that kind of thing, explaining where the names came from, but I don't know if that really has much to do with him exactly. Though maybe in a way. But I'm thinking this is going to be more in-universe stuff. Like, when we're talking lore and creation, as the title says, I think we're more talking about, yeah, the lore and creation surrounding him as a character in Overlord, and not so much, like the more meta aspect of it. Though I don't know. I'm interested regardless, and hopefully this will be a fun video. Let's get started, though, and find out. Here we go. Oh. Okay, a lot of people want to know about Demiurge.
Alright, let's talk about Ainz's right-hand man and tactical genius. Demiurge if you watch the dub, or Demiurgus if you watch the sub.
Oh.
As per usual, this will be part 1 of 2 covering everything from
Demiurgus?
his lore and creation to the little insights in his character as stated in the novels. So, let's begin. This might come as a shock to you, but the Guild of Ainz Ul Gon often like to roleplay as evil villains. I know, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I guess after all, one of the conditions for joining was to play a heteromorphic race, which does consist of some rather monstrous and evil-looking creatures. However, it wasn't always this way. Initially, the guild was nothing more than a means for heteromorphic players to band together, since, as I've mentioned before, there were no penalties imposed on players who killed heteromorphs. This resulted in a natural animosity between heteromorphs and non-heteromorphs. I mean, it's only natural that given the opportunity to PK without any repercussions that you would do it. Who doesn't like some good old open world PvP? But heteromorph killing damn near bordered on straight cyberbullying, since most of the players preferred to play as humanoid characters. Those who played the monsters and demons were very much outnumbered and ganged up on. But as the guild grew and established itself as a prominent force in Yggdrasil, it drifted away from its original purpose of protecting and supporting its members towards some more traditional endgame MMO content like raiding and guild PvP, since they could finally play the game in peace. Along the way, a good chunk of the guild members embraced the reputation of their avatars and indulged in some role-playing as supervillains, trying to make a name for the guild as a legion of evil masterminds, all while fashioning Nazarick and its NPCs as a realm of monstrously evil creatures. Even Ainz, back when he was known as Momonga, styled his character after an evil necromancer of death, mostly for roleplay purposes. It wasn't a particularly strong build in the metagame, but he enjoyed it, and supplemented it with good gear and solid tactics to make it work. But there was no guild member who took to playing the part of a villain more wholeheartedly and eagerly than Ulbert Alain Odo, who, you guessed it, was Demiurge's creator. This intense roleplay was for no reason other than he just had the most fun acting as evil as possible. Obviously, he wasn't evil in real life, but guild members often thought him to be something of a Chunibu, someone with the illusion that they have special powers that no one else has.
Chunibus.
But in actuality, if he was something, it'd just be a misanthrope, a person with a dislike towards human society and just other people in general. As such, he didn't like most people and didn't make very many friends, but in the guild, he could be free to indulge in his darkest desires, mainly to trick, manipulate, ambush, and exploit other guilds, operating with the knowledge that the game was ultimately just a game, and that nobody had been really hurt at the end of the day. Unless you're playing a team-based game like League of Legends or Overwatch, which in that case you have a very high chance of breaking your hands from smashing your keyboard or punching a hole through your monitor. But anyway, it's not like he played as some kind of sociopath. He just enjoyed more romantic elements of villainy. He was the one that suggested the guild members should assemble in the throne room to congratulate any invading players who made it all the way through the multiple floors of Nazarick, before partaking in a final glorious battle, or just shit-stomping them back to wherever they resurrect in Yggdrasil. It's from the same vein as a tyrant facing down the heroes before they fight for the fate of a country. It's this penchant for romanticized villainy that Ulbert so deeply idolized that made its way into Demiurge, whom he designed to be the ultimate evil mastermind. While Ulbert could have just named his creation Satan or Lucifer if he wanted him to sound like the ultimate evil being, it's clear that he wanted to give him a name that was a little more original and unique, but just as fitting. Christian mythos has long since been a popular source of imagery for Japanese creators, what with shows like Death Note, Neon Genesis Evangelion, or even High School DxD. But apparently that wasn't quite cool enough for Ulbert, so he went with something a little less known. In the old Jewish Christian religion of Gnosticism, the Demiurge, deriving from the Greek for creator, is the architect of the material universe. Not just its creator, but sort of a craftsman or artisan of it. In some of the more dualistic branches of Gnosticism, the spiritual world is pure and good, while the material world is more base, impure, and corrupt. Thus, the Demiurge is sometimes seen as a hostile force that envies its spiritual counterpart. One branch in particular also refers to him as Jaldabaoth, who then adopted the title of the Demiurge, or Creator, in an attempt to arrogantly stake claim over a world that he was only partially responsible for making. We can see some of these properties mirrored in the Demiurge from Overlord. The first and most obvious is that he is quite corrupt and evil. In fact, perhaps a little too evil for his namesake, who is sometimes seen as misguided or flawed. Though that might have more to do with how the Yggdrasil morality system worked than anything. Demiurge has a karma value of -500, also known as pure evil, which would have been quite useful for certain game mechanics.
-500.
In the case of some of the less evil NPCs like Entoma or Aura, with karma values of -100 each, their evil takes the form of a callous disregard or apathy for the lives and suffering of others. Demiurge, by contrast,
-100 for Aura.
That's just because
almost
he doesn't care
surprising.
about others. No. He cares very much about causing as much suffering as possible. He is a pure sadist who relishes in the pain and misery of others, and will seek every opportunity to do so.
Sounds
the
about
only
right.
thing fundamentally keeping him in check, of course, are Ainz's orders. But so long as he can still accomplish them, he'll take every opportunity he can find to spread as much of that misery and suffering as he can. To show just how evil he is as clearly and easily as possible, let's use an example. There's a place that the Overlord community likes to refer to, known as Demiurge's Happy Farm.
Okay.
You see, Ainz was a bit
I think some
concerned
people
about the
tried to
state
tell
of
me about
Nazarick's
this.
finances and supplies. Sure, his storehouses were filled with all the materials he needed to manufacture large quantities of potions, scrolls, food, weapons, and even armor. But there was really no way to replace the extremely high-level ingredients needed to make them, which were all sourced from Yggdrasil's dungeons. This meant no long-term sustainability. But Demiurge, being the evil genius he is, says he'll start running some experiments on sourcing quality ingredients in the New World. Spell scrolls came first. Ordinary paper was only good for level 1 spell scrolls. High-tier scrolls had to be made from the hides of rare magical beasts like dragons, a very strong emphasis on the rare. Because of their rarity, the goal then became to find a source which was common enough to explore mass manufacturing techniques, but which could also be used to create higher level scrolls. Makes sense, right? So what was Demiurge's solution?
Sure.
Bipedal sheep, of course. Also commonly referred to as humans. The first lucky test subjects were the surviving members of the Sunlight Scripture from Season 1. Demiurge also began kidnapping numerous villagers from the Robile Holy Kingdom far to the southwest. Obviously, the further from Nazarick the better, so as to avoid anything being tracked back to Ainz somehow. He even attempted to kidnap hundreds of thousands of humans from the capital city of the Riestes kingdom, though when Ainz found out, he quashed the idea and had them be mercifully executed instead of experimented on. In any case, Demiurge began optimizing the scroll manufacturing process with very brutal efficiency. So you'd think that after skinning a human once that you'd be done with them and then move on to the next. Nope. Healing spells exist for a reason, and apparently they're for growing a full layer of skin back, just so they can remove it once again.
Okay.
Though anything removed from the body after said person was healed would disappear unless it were first processed and radically changed into something else. Okay, that's pretty efficient, but we're just getting started. Once that process had been optimized and perfected, one human could produce dozens of layers of skin per day. So that solved the scroll issue. But what about food for the scroll supply? Well,
this is pretty messed
really
up.
Apply? Chop off an arm or a leg, make a soup out of it, heal them, then feed it back to them. It's brilliant. Optimization at its finest. Of course, this process could be done for any organism, but even then, Demiurge still wasn't done. It was important to find out what factors influenced scroll quality. The average human was good enough to produce level 3 scrolls, but what about level 4? This required a lot more tests
average.
on a lot of humans, be it young, old, strong, weak, it didn't matter. But many more test subjects were needed. The most important step after that became domestication. Humans by nature are a fairly complex species, but just like a horse, given enough time, their spirit could be broken. Though the process was difficult, since humans are generally more sophisticated and intelligent than your typical farm animal, and our actions are not so easy to predict. So. Fortunately, figuring out what others think and do, then coming up with a strategy to defeat it, is one of Demiurge's many specialties, but more on that later. You may be wondering why Demiurge chose humans instead of any other species to be his test subjects, especially since the upper limit of the quality of their skin was between the 3rd and 4th tier. Well, the answer is simple. Demiurge would derive the most enjoyment from relentlessly and mercilessly torturing humans. Yep.
Of course.
It was primarily due to the fact that humans were relatively intelligent and sophisticated, and boy did he try his best to enjoy himself. In one rather graphic instance, he butchered a family's kids right in front of their eyes. He then proceeded to invite them to come and watch while he fed those kids.
You gotta
to
show
another
these kids.
family. This family had been nearly starved to death, and as such, they ravenously devoured the meal. To Demiurge, this was for no other reason than to just relish the looks on their faces and enjoy the resentment that this fostered between the two groups, though it was performed under the guise of a domestication experiment, so not to seem as if it was pointless. This sick mentality that Demiurge had did not hinder his path to success though. He attempted to find the most sadistic solution possible while also effectively achieving results. Sure, human skin was limited to the level of spell scroll that they could produce, but Demiurge still saw many more possibilities to explore, such as what if humans crossbred with a different race? I mean, half-elves and half-orcs already existed, so they know it's possible. Think of all the possibilities.
Yeah, I don't think she is half-orc.
As such,
might as well be, though.
Forced breeding experimentation to see if he could produce a new mixed race of creatures that would provide better results. Then, whatever process with the humans showed the most promising results, he would then use on the species that produced the highest level quality items. No need to waste precious resources when you can experiment on the most widely available guinea pig on the planet, humanity. So yes, Demiurge is, well, a sick fuck.
Yeah?
But there was a brutal intelligence and efficiency to his sadism that you can't help but appreciate. Moving on, as I had mentioned in the previous Albedo video, Demiurge and Albedo are by far the most intelligent NPCs in Nazarick.
Makes sense.
Demiurge in particular regularly comes up with good plans that can benefit Nazarick, and since Ainz trusts his intelligence, he gives him broad discretion to implement them as he sees fit. Though it often seems like Ainz doesn't really know all that much about the true personality of Ulbert's terrifying creation, or just deliberately chooses not to know. That being said, his true specialties lie in military operations and tactics, most notably in the situations where he had to anticipate the thought process of others and come up with an ingenious strategy to beating them. His design was intended to be a kind of military general, and much of his abilities lie in summoning lesser devils to do his bidding. This allows him to predict the actions and personalities of others. For example, Just by reading about Princess Renner in Sebas's intelligence reports, he managed to figure out that she herself was a sadistic genius who might just serve as a useful collaborator to Nazarick. He was also able to very easily predict that the Emperor would plan to betray Nazarick, almost as if he were reading an open book. It's this level of intellect that he proudly bears that feeds deeply into his arrogance, the second trait he shares with his namesake. Though you can't really say it's without justification.
Yeah.
Similar to almost everyone in Nazarick,
Evil Eye.
he refers to pretty much everyone not created by the Supreme Ones
Best
as
girl.
a lesser being. I mean, compared to a level 100
think.
NPC super genius,
Still kind
he
of
might as well be.
unsure
Though
about
this
that.
arrogance does not extend so far as to consider himself superior to any of the Supreme Ones. That level of respect has been deeply ingrained into the core of his personality, and he'll find it very much impossible to disobey their orders. It brings up a neat little contradiction. Since none of them have his superior intellect, shouldn't this feed his arrogance enough to influence his opinions of them? This brings up one of Ainz's biggest fears, thinking that one day, his currently loyal subordinates will unmask his true person, lose their respect for him, and then abandon him, especially Demiurge and Albedo because of how intelligent he knows they already are. Fortunately for Ainz, it is because they are so intelligent that he doesn't have much to worry about. Demiurge can easily rationalize Ainz's bad ideas by coming up with excuses and justifications for why they are secretly brilliant, which he is inclined to do because of his deeply rooted loyalty and respect. He often deludes himself into thinking that the reason why Ainz's ideas seem so dumb at times is because he has this unfathomable intellect. Demiurge then tries his best to read between the lines and find whatever hidden purpose or goals that there may be. So unlike his namesake from Gnosticism that's jealous of the true creator that stands above him, Overlord Demiurge is more than willing to accept the fact that the Supreme Ones stand far above himself, and even seems more than willing to elevate them to that position himself. Then the third and final trait that he shares with the Demiurge is that of the artisan. Much like Ulbert, he prefers his villainry to have an element of artistry and romanticism to it. He enjoys the suffering of others, but what he seeks goes beyond sadism. He doesn't just want people to suffer, he wants to expertly craft the maximal amount of suffering possible. His villainry is an art, and he is the painter. He's always in search for greater perfection and depth to his craft. Giving his victims a sense of ease before completely trampling all over it is a common trap that he likes to use. Exemplified best when he accidentally killed Evil Eye's friends right in front of her in order to maximize
that
He
sucked.
then likes to play coy and use euphemisms to describe his evil acts. One of his minions,
They got
Pulcinella,
better, though.
styled after a Victorian-era theatrical comedy character, describes Demiurge as this merciful overlord by reframing all of his actions in the nicest terms possible.
I don't even remember that
This
character.
is partially the reason why the human Hyde Farm has been ironically dubbed the Happy Farm. So part of the reason why Ainz doesn't really know much of what Demiurge is up to is because he just plays it off as something minor. He sees humor in ironically referring to humans as bipedal sheep, and assumes that Ainz gets the joke. But he doesn't. This deep interest in theatrical villainry even influences his Jaldabaoth persona, so that Ainz could have this infamous being to defeat later on. He rather enjoyed the opportunity to play act as some sort of noble rogue that could treat Ainz's Momon persona with such great respect, since, after all, no other being outside of Nazarick could ever match him and be deserving of such a response. And those are the three main aspects of Demiurge and how he's influenced by his namesake. An interesting thing to note is that it's said that a demon's power is intrinsically related to its name. The name itself carries enough power that summoners invoke it to call demons into the material world. It's so fundamental, in fact, that it's believed that a demon who tries to pass itself off with a false name would just disappear out of existence. The New World also functions in this way, which is why Demiurge can use Jaldabaoth freely without repercussion. Perhaps it was Ulbert who wrote it into his lore so that Demiurge could be known by multiple names, since after all, they are pretty much synonymous to each other. But yeah, that's the lore behind what's arguably one of the most evil entities within Nazarick. I probably should have put up a not safe for work tag, but hey, if you're watching Overlord already, then you should already know what to expect.
Yeah.
Though personally, that Happy Farm is definitely overkill, but really plays a huge role in building his character. Anyway, next part we'll be covering how strong he is, along with his role in Nazarick. So as always, thanks again to Jinfor for doing the research on this, and thank you so much for watching. A really quick side note, I'm looking for artists to commission for a t-shirt design, so if you are one or know anyone who is, then feel free to message me on Twitter and then I'm sure we can work something out. But now, until next time, ciao.
Well, cool. That's pretty interesting. I mean, I feel like I knew most of that, because you guys did tell me about the farm. The show doesn't really make that clear. But, yeah, that's left, I guess, for the novels that go into that. But you guys filled me in with your comments on the videos when I reacted to it. But actually hearing the full details, it's pretty ghastly. That's kind of messed up, to put it mildly. And yeah, I looked up the name thing because it was just so weird to me that Jaldabaoth, or however you want to say it, Jaldabaoth, yeah, yeah, just that the name was the same as the, I don't even want to say it now, as that other thing that you know, and that one thing. I mean, don't want to get into spoilers, but just, yeah. That name appearing in another place and then being used in Overlord. I was curious about it, so I looked it up, and that's when I found kind of the origins of Demiurge and Jaldabaoth. So, yeah. But hearing more about the connections is cool, and kind of, it was informative. It really laid Demiurge's character out, and I think helped me appreciate stuff more. I mean, actually hearing, like, about his creator was interesting too, because they don't really go into that in the anime all that much. I mean, they talk about it here and there, but it's kind of hard to really make too much sense of it. That's the kind of thing I think that would really come across a lot better in a book, in a novel format. So, yeah, kind of cool to actually hear a bit more about that angle. And negative 500 karma. That's great. Just ridiculous evil. But yeah, Demiurge is a very interesting character and a very cool character, and it was nice to learn a bit more about him. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.